Well, it is finally time to start planning for the 2025 gardening season. Where we are at here in Alaska, we are kind of right on the edge between zone 4A and 3B. For the most part, though, I think we're pretty much right in that 4A area. Our growing season is 110 days long, and that stretches from May 22nd and goes until September 10th on average. Of course, that can fluctuate quite a bit just depending on when we have our first and last frosts. About 1 week ago, I started our first round of seeds, and then way back in January, we were at the store and I couldn't help myself, and I did end up buying a couple perennials too. So we're going to kind of take a peek at everything that I have started, and then I will tell you what my plan is to start this coming week. To start, these are the 4 perennials that I ended up buying. In the way back here, we have 2 kiwi plants. This one is thriving. Unfortunately, Rowan did get a hold of that back one and snapped it, but it looks like it is still coming back. We've got some green growth happening, and I think it'll make it. Right here we have a raspberry, and then we have a blackberry that we're gonna try. As I said, I got all of those back in January, and I'm actually very happy with the amount of growth that we have going on them. I was a little concerned they would start growing right when I first bought them, and they've kind of held off. They're starting to take off right now, but I think we're kind of at that point in time where I can manage them until I'm able to get them outside, so we're okay with that. In front of those, we have just a couple more perennial type plants. I had some rhubarb seeds that I was gifted, and then some asparagus seeds, so we did a tray of both of those. I don't know if my hand's probably a little shaky. I don't know if anyone saw anything. We started this tray about a week ago, and we actually are starting to see some little seeds kind of pop through the surface of the soil. This is mostly all onions. So I can show you we did a few varieties here. This is some of that asparagus that we planted in the other tray. But we did Utah yellow sweet, and then a sweet white. I also did some leeks. And then I was gifted some artichokes, so we've got a couple green globe artichokes back there. And then I just did 1 row of some fennel. So I'm actually really not a fan of fennel at all, but I'm kind of determined to keep trying things until I'm 100% convinced that I don't like them. Leeks are pretty good. I've only grown them 1 other time, so I definitely want to give it another go. I ended up just dehydrating them the last time that I grew them, and they're just super nice to be able to throw into soups or stews or anything like that. But we have not had a lot of experience eating them fresh, and I kind of want to try grilling them. I think that'll be really good. And then between the 2 onion varieties, I calculated it out, and I think I put 400 seeds in those trays. My hope and thought process behind planting 400 potential onions is that I really do only expect about 1/3 of those to not make it, maybe 1/4 to 1/3 to not actually make it up to a proper onion size. So I think in the end we'll have anywhere between 200 and 300 onions, which sounds like a lot, but that's less than 1 onion a day. Once you start to think about your preservation projects, you can really go through your onions quite quickly, especially just doing salsas alone. So we want to make sure that we have plenty of onions, and I think even if these all came up, the size of the onions are probably going to be smaller than what you can get at the store. So we're just going to kind of hope that we get enough to go through a whole year, and whatever we do end up getting will be fine. Most of it is the yellow onion variety, because this is our favorite. And then any of these sweet white ones, I think this is what we're hopefully going to be using mostly in our preservation projects, such as if we make salsa or tomato sauce or anything that we want to use onion in. Hopefully we'll be using these white ones, and then that way we can save these yellow onions just because simply we like to eat these a lot more. So as I said, this is everything that I started about a week ago. That's going to be right around the 12 to 11 weeks out from our last frost date. So this week, my goal, which is going to be between the 10 and 11 week out from our last frost date, I'm going to start some more things again. My plan is to every single week start something. That way I don't have to do everything all in one big go, and I can kind of just keep it moving. Not too many realistically, but this is everything that I want to plant this coming week. So the first thing, just because I don't know why I didn't grab it, but I want to get some bunching onions going. Those should have been planted in this tray of onions, and I'm not really sure why I didn't, so we need to make sure we get these going. I also want to get some celery. We have a good amount of celery that we have dehydrated right now, so we don't need a ton of this. I think I'm just going to end up doing one row and just see if we can eat any of it fresh. We're not the biggest celery eaters, but it is really nice to have some of it on hand. I am determined to grow my own loofah. I think this just would be so much fun, but we do need to get it going quite a bit early so that it actually has time to grow and mature if we're ever given that chance. I have only ever failed growing these, but I'm determined. One day, I don't care how small it is, I will grow at least one of these. So this is probably going to always be on our list. Next is a Mexican sour gherkin. Some people call them mouse melons. I think these are absolutely delicious. They're the size of a grape, but they're kind of just like a little cucumber. I love these so much. They do take a little while to get started though, so you definitely need to get these going. They do vine, they climb everywhere, so they're going to kind of make wherever I have them going turn into a little bit of a jungle, but I'm okay with that because I want these very badly. Then I have just a couple different types of eggplants. So I've got just your simple little finger eggplant and then this really cute frog egg variety. These, again, just because they're cute and I want to do them. And then this is just your pretty standard smaller eggplant though. Cody's not the biggest fan of eggplant, so I don't need a ton of these. This is kind of just maybe a couple times throughout the summer we want to have a couple. So I'm not needing a lot. I just want some little cute ones. Then the rest of these seeds are all peppers, but I'm only going to be starting my hot peppers this week. I do think that hot peppers take a little bit longer than sweet peppers do, so I'm going to save starting the sweet peppers until next week, and this week we're just going to focus on getting these hot peppers started. So I have a couple different varieties. This one is a duplicate thing. I do experiment with saving my own seed. I think that's a lot of fun, and this is just a duplicate one that I had saved from 2022. So again, some of these are a lot older. We're working our way through them. So I'm going to start with the 3 hot peppers, maybe 4. The 4 hot peppers that we actually really want to eat and consume, and they have a real purpose. So to start, just your cayenne along. I love growing these, and we just dry them, and then that way we can keep them to put in chilies. I can put them in our salsa. I put them in our enchilada sauce, which is delicious, and I am definitely growing these for enchilada sauce this year. So these are a must. We have our standard jalapenos. I really like salmon with jalapeno in it, so we need to grow these so we can freeze them up so whenever we have salmon we can add some diced jalapeno to it. That is the purpose of these. So at my gardener, if you time it right, you can get some grab bags from them where it's kind of just 20 random seeds. You don't know what you're going to get, and it's a little bit cheaper. So I ended up doing that, and this is one that I got in the grab bag. I have not tried this variety yet. It's called Santa Fe, but it sounds to me like it might be somewhat similar to the jalapeno, at least in heat-wise. But they just come in a little bit more fun colors. So we're going to give this one a try. It says on the back that it would be really good pickled for like sandwiches and stuff, and that appeals to me greatly. So I think our goal is to grow these this year to turn them into some pickled pepper slices. And then lastly, we just have an ancho pepper variety, which these are really good just doing in tacos, enchiladas, stuff like that. So we want to have a couple of these where it's more of a mild pepper, but it has just a little bit of something to it. These last 3 varieties of peppers are just because I always have to grow something fun. So to start, which I think these are so cute, so it's the Brazilian starfish peppers. It doesn't sound like these are super hot. They're a little bit more on the mild size, and I have I have grown these once before, and I did eat it straight off the plant, and it wasn't hot at all. So I think we will just have to see if that varies based on the seed or not. Potential to be hot though, we'll see. But they're super cute, really little. I think they're only about 2 inches in diameter at the most. I have a fish pepper, which it's just kind of a smaller, kind of jalapeno sized pepper, but it's got stripes on it, so that looks really cool. And then lastly are these Buena Mulata peppers, and they are purple and they are so pretty, and I have grown these so many times and I absolutely love them. They are a hotter pepper. Flavor wise, I'm not really too sure. I kind of just dry them and then I add them in with my cayenne peppers sometimes, just kind of like for chili flakes. So not something that I've ever eaten fresh, but I grow them just because I think they're so pretty. So that definitely has to be on the list, probably every year also. So there is my stack of things that I need to be growing this coming week. So I've said a few times how some things I'm growing just because it's actually something that we want versus things that I grow just because they're pretty and I really enjoy them. And I think both of them are very important because you want to actually enjoy what you're doing. However, this year we are going to be putting a pretty good emphasis on trying to figure out which varieties actually produce the best for us. So specifically with our peppers and with our tomatoes, we're going to be planting a lot of the main varieties that we want, but we're going to be kind of keeping track on a spreadsheet to see each of the varieties, when are they starting to produce? When are they stop producing? So do they only produce for a couple weeks? Do they produce most of the summer? Is it in the beginning of the summer? Is it in the end of the summer? We want to keep track of all of those things. We want to keep track of what is a high yielder for its production, and we want to keep track of what maybe isn't so much, so that in the future we can determine which ones we want to choose when it comes to actually planting. As I've said over and over again though, I will always keep some of the fun varieties simply just because it's fun, regardless if they do well or not. But another reason we also want to keep track of if it's an early producer or a late producer, that way, if we're thinking about we want to be fresh eating this all summer long, we can plant both ones that produce a little bit earlier and ones that produce a little bit later, just so that we can be eating from it. Maybe it doesn't produce a ton of fruit, but if it's at least producing earlier than one that might produce a lot more later, then we can have something that we can kind of slowly be eating and not necessarily just focus on growing that one for preservation, if that makes sense. We are not only going to be focusing on actual varieties, but we're also going to be planting things with certain stuff in mind, such as what we actually want to preserve. So I've got yet again another notebook. I've got notebooks everywhere, just a whole bunch of notes on them. We have been talking about it, and we have our list of things that we 100% want to preserve this year. And so based off of this list, we are going to make sure that no matter what, we don't get too crazy going off task planting other things. We want to have the stuff planted to try to get this done for us. So most of this is a tomato product though. We've got diced tomatoes, tomato sauce, tomato juice comes from the tomato sauce. We want to make salsa, enchilada sauce, a whole bunch of things that involve tomatoes. So this is going to be a huge tomato heavy year for us. Honestly, I think it's going to be a heavy tomato year every year for us, just because it is really hard to grow a lot of ripe tomatoes here in Alaska, just because the season's a lot shorter. But we are basically out of all of our tomato products, so we want to put an extra heavy emphasis on it this year, just so we can try to get a little bit more than maybe we typically would. While most of this is tomato product based, we do have a few things on here that we have goals for that don't have anything to do with tomatoes. One of them being beets. I really like beets out of the garden, and I like having just canned plain beets, not spiced beets. I'm not the biggest fan of those, but just plain beets in water and canned. I think that's something that's very doable to be able to grow and preserve, so that in the middle of winter we can have a different type of vegetable, a different type of something on our shelf that we just haven't had the last couple of years. So beets is going to be one of them. I think I mentioned before that we want to do more green beans, and specifically I want to French cut them because we like to make green bean casserole. We don't have just plain green beans as a side dish very often, but we do a few times a year make green bean casserole, And to be honest, Rowan loves green bean casserole, so she devours it. She eats more of it than I do. So I think we are going to have to make sure we have quite a few cans of green beans coming into this year. Another thing I want to try to make is cowboy candy. I've made it in the past and I wasn't the biggest fan. I don't think I was quite as experimental in the kitchen back then when I tried it before. So I want to try just making a very small batch one more time, give it another go, see what we think. I think it might be really good on salmon. So we're going to give that one another go. Of course, pickles. I love pickles so much. Unfortunately, I am terrible at growing cucumbers. So I'm really hoping we have the well, we have our water source. I am just, please, I want to be able to grow so many cucumbers this year, and I want to turn a lot of them into pickles. And then lastly, mock pineapple. I really like pineapple also, and I have seen a recipe going around where you take zucchini and you take pineapple juice and you kind of can make this mock pineapple something. I guess you can kind of cube them up and it's like little mini tidbits or something of the zucchini, but it tastes like pineapple, which I get. Pineapple is a very strong flavor and zucchini is pretty bland, kind of takes on whatever flavor you're adding to it. So I think I just want to do a small batch, see what the fuss is all about, because I think it could be really good. So that is also on the list. And that's it. That's really all we have for our main goals of preserving things to go on our shelves. It's a lot though. The tomato products alone have a lot that need to be included in them. They need the onions, they need the peppers, they need the tomatoes is going to be the biggest thing. And then of course the herbs that go along with it all too. So while it doesn't seem like a lot on our list, it is going to take a lot of effort to get this up. And then of course off on the side, we want to be able to shred some zucchini. So I love being able to throw that into a soup, throwing it into a stew. I like thawing it and throwing it in with basically anytime we have spaghetti sauce, adding shredded zucchini, spaghetti, lasagna, stuff like that. I think it's really good. Any extra peppers, we are 100% going to prioritize eating peppers fresh out of the garden. Anything extra, if for some reason, which I would love, never going to complain about, if for some reason we have a whole bunch where we can't keep up on eating them fresh, we are going to chop them up and then just keep them in the freezer. And then, of course, anything like carrots and broccoli. We want to have cabbage, the basics, things like that we don't necessarily have to do anything for to preserve. But we want to kind of grow them to have an emphasis, just to be on our shelf, to be able to grab them and eat them. I'm sure there's going to be a few other things as the year goes on that we think of that we want to preserve. But just as a starting point for us, that really is the top priority, that we want to get these things done first and foremost. On top of just our growing goals and our preservation goals, we also have some very simple gardening goals for this coming year too. We do want to put a huge emphasis on our gardening space outside so that we have somewhere to plant everything. We haven't shown it in a lot of our videos so far, but we do have a skid steer now, and that is going to come in so much handy getting the groundwork prepared for our garden space this coming year. Cody has already kind of scraped off the top layer of snow. We're hoping it'll melt and thaw a lot faster so that we can actually get to work getting that space ready to go. I don't anticipate having a lot done and in place at the start of this gardening year. I do foresee a lot of the garden work that we do going to be more towards the fall time at the end of this gardening season, but that should mean that everything will be ready to go by next year. So we are going to have to kind of play around and work with things this season, but I think we're going to be at a really good place where we can get a lot of things we might have to shuffle stuff around partway through the year, and that's totally fine. But our main gardening goals for this year is get the land out there leveled, or at least maybe not leveled, but smoothed out. And then we want to start working on our garden beds. So we want to figure out what that main layout is of the garden and start actually building some beds. My biggest priority is everything that's more of a perennial. I want to get those planted in the ground so that they have their space. They can thrive then. They're not constantly being in a pot. They're not constantly getting shuffled around. I want everything to have its spot so it can start to grow really, really well. We do have a couple fruit trees out on the other side of the greenhouse from the house. They are kind of just propped up above the ground. We have leaves and sawdust and stuff kind of mulched around them, but they aren't actually in their place yet. So a big priority for me with this garden space is getting those trees in the ground where I want them to be. And I do want my fruit trees in the middle of our garden. One of the things that I learned very quickly being here in Alaska is that when you have sun, you have sun. And if you're trying to grow brassicas, leafy greens, things like that, the sunshine actually works against you. It's pretty rough. So I want to make sure that I have our fruit trees actually in our garden space, because they are then going to be able to provide areas of shade that I can focus on growing those types of things that don't really need the sunshine as much as other things do. It's actually going to help them out by not having as much direct sunlight on them. They shouldn't just immediately go to seed. I should be able to get a lot more out of them then. So I think we can kind of play around with where everything's spaced out to kind of just give ourselves benefits for everything. I have a lot of hopes for this gardening year. I'm super excited about it. I think we can make some really big steps forward in it, getting our main structure set up for the following years as well. And I think we will even go outside. It's beautiful out there. It's sunny. It's actually really hard to be sitting inside right now. So we're going to head outside. I'll kind of give you a really rough idea of what we're thinking, but just keep in mind, everything is still just a thought right now. Our ideas can change in the moment of what we're going to end up doing. So we kind of just have some vague ideas of what's going on. Like I said, it's been absolutely beautiful out here lately. Everything is melting and it feels so good having the sunshine again. Everything out here has been melting. We actually have just some ice now from all of the snow that's been melting, creating ice on the floor because the ground is still very much frozen. However, 2 nights ago now, I think, we did get like 5 inches of snow. So that's kind of taking away from the fact that everything is beautiful and melted, but I'm still going to kind of show you where Cody kind of scraped away all of the snow and roughly what our ideas are for this garden. Now, keep in mind, he did scrape away the snow before we just got those 5 inches of snow, but anyway. So, quick frame of reference. I'm going to try not to spin too quick. House. We're probably going to have a yard. And then we're going to have garden to this tree right here. This greenhouse will end up being moved, okay? So garden probably from this tree over to kind of like halfway between where the greenhouse is and the house is going to be a garden area. Next to the house and near it, we want to have kind of like a yard. So that's kind of what we're thinking right now. But most of this is all going to be a garden spot. Underneath that bucket is our well, okay? So this is where our water source is. It'll be very close to our garden then. I don't think you can see it that well, but we've got our 3 fruit trees right there. This is also where we have the rhubarb, garlic, a couple flowers maybe. I can't remember what all we have planted there. We'll figure it out when the snow melts. So I got up past that big mound of snow. But Cody cleared all of this snow here, most of this back area. So you've got a nice pile of snow over there and a nice pile of snow over there. But all of this actually, up until we got this last bit of snow, we could see the ground. So now we have a good few inches layer of snow on there, but this should thaw way faster than if we were to leave all that snow on there. So hopefully as it's thawing, Cody can come on out here and he can start leveling that ground and figuring out what we want to do with it with our machinery. So that's kind of our rough overview of kind of what we're doing this year for our garden plan. Let me know if you guys have any questions or if there's anything else you can think of that you think we should be preserving or focusing on. There's always so many options. There's never a right or a wrong way to do things. You just have to figure out what works best for you. And we are kind of just at that point where we do need to keep playing around and trying a bunch of new methods, a bunch of new ways of doing things so we can figure out what works best for us and our family.